Hello, this is Andrew. We're going to take a little deeper dive look into the protocols and the OSI model. Okay. Okay, so we saw this earlier, and this is layer 7, 6, and 5. This is layer 4, 3, 2, and 1. So at each layer, you have protocols that operate at that layer. For example, HTTP and HTTPS. We all know what that is. That's for opening web pages, right? And then you have file transfer, which is HTTP, SFTP, TFTP. And then you have mail, which is SMTP, POP3. And there's just really a lot of protocols. There's like a lot. But anyway, what we're concerned about, especially for certification exams, is just a certain amount of them are tested on. So those are the ones we're going to look at the moment. So as you go to transport layer, that's has two protocols. One is TCP and the other is UDP. Okay, so the way to think about this is if I'm using TCP, then I've literally, as I go down here and I go through the network, I establish a link and it's connected and set up, and it stays set up for the duration of the contact. Okay, UDP, there may or may not be a link set up, and it's just basically throwing the data across the internet, and if it makes it to this side, that's good. If it doesn't make it, well, there's nothing we can do about it. That might sound a little strange, but what would be a case where you would want to do that? Like, for example, a phone call a voice over IP phone call. If I'm talking to you and part of one of the words drops, there's really no point in resending it again because it would be late. It wouldn't fit into the conversation, so it would make no sense. And in fact, if some of the conversation were dropped, if just little pieces, nobody's going to notice anyway. So UDP would be good for something like that. You know, anything real time is going to be UDP, like Skype, whatever. Anything like that is going to be UDP, anything real time. Um, TCP is like, okay, if I send you a file and you only got 80% of it, well, your computer can send a message back to me and say, well, I didn't get I didn't get these pieces, please send more. So TCP is just it's called a connection. It's connection, and UDP is connectionless. Okay. So then, of course, when we get down to the networks, we're going to have packets. This is IP. This is the IP world. Then at the data link layer, this is going to add your Ethernet. This is Ethernet and wireless, and this is going to add in PPP, and this is going to add your MAC address. Okay, so now we've taken a look at that a little deeper, and I want to take a look a little more about encapsulation in a little more detail. So here's your layer 7. So for example, if I'm wanting to FTP a file, I break down this file into these datagrams, and at layer 4 it's called a segment. And what that literally does is put the source port number and the destination port. So you go back here. Okay, if we go back to previous slide, you can see this is a port. Okay, so if I'm doing an FTP, there's a port. So when it gets to the transport layer, it's going to add a port destination number and a port source number. Right now, we're not concerned about what that is. We just know that it's putting something in there. At layer 3, it's the same thing. Now we're going to add another header on. We looked at that before. And now this whole thing is called a packet. And it has an IP address that's a source, a destination, and a source and a destination. Next, we're going to the data link layer, which is going to add a MAC address, a source MAC address, a destination MAC address. It's going to add that to this packet that was up here, and now the whole thing is called a frame. It's also going to add a trailer, So now you're looking back at your network again where we saw this before. Okay, so we'll look at a little more detail of the FTP data got broken down and put into this layer 4, which added what? Port, source, and destination. Then it goes to layer 3 and it adds an IP address, source and destination, then a MAC address, and then it goes across the network, strips off the headers and trailers, and bam, you transferred that first piece of data. Okay, so we went through that before, but now what you really want to start looking at is ports that you need to know. These are ports that you're going to see on exams, interviews, and use at your job from now till as long as you're working the industry. So HTTPS is 443, HTTP is 80, port 80, Telnet is port 23, SSH is port 22, FTP is port 20 and 21, SFTP is port 22, IMAP is port 143, SMTP is port 25, and DNS is port 53. Now if you look, all of these right here are TCPs. These are connection. UDP is connectionless. DNS can be connectionless, so it can be UDP or TFTP is also UDP. Then at the network layer, we have the IP. The data link layer, we have the Ethernet, serial, ATM. The physical layer, we have wire, fiber optic, and wireless. This table you absolutely have to memorize. It would probably do you well to remember a few more, but these are just bare bones port addresses that you just really need to know. I mean, if you're at a job or anywhere and you're talking HTTP and you don't know what port 80 is, then you're in trouble. Okay. All right, so with that, I'd like to end this video, and thank you very much for your time, and have a good day.